Robert Morris has resigned. He's no longer the pastor at Gateway Church. And while that's a good thing, he in no way needs to be the pastor of Gateway Church or any church. It's too little, it's too late, and there is still a lot more that has to be done in this situation to protect people and to get justice. So in this video, we're going to talk about just that. What has went wrong in Gateway's response so far? What is the work that still has to be done? What are the things that we can't ignore? And what is still wrong? Because there's a lot that's still wrong about Gateway's response, even after the resignation of Robert Morris. In full disclosure, I'm going to try to do this as quickly and simply as possible. We try to be as thorough as we normally can. But guys, this story, it's been heavy. This whole thing has been incredibly heavy. So I want to get you the information that you need, but also after such a heavy week so far, I don't want this video to be super long, really just because I'm so tired of having to continue to talk about the poor responses. Now, we'll be back. We'll continue to talk about this. We'll give more details as we go, and we will continue to fight for justice for victims like Cindy Clemenshire at every step of the way. But it is sickening. It is so gross. It is so frustrating. It is so angering to keep watching churches respond with the same ridiculous playbook. The same playbook that dismisses victims and dismisses abuse. And if you're not familiar with the playbook, that we can go really in depth about it, but the simplest way to think about the playbook is the term DARVO. And DARVO is used in abuse cases, not just spiritual abuse, but really in all abuse cases. DARVO is the typical playbook response from predators to abuse. And it stands for deny, attack, and then reverse victim and offender. And Gateway has followed this all over again. I'm so tired of this, but the good news is, if we will learn from this, if we will hold our churches accountable, if we will decide as parishioners and church leaders how our churches should respond before there's a crisis, before there's sin, then we can slowly start responding the right way. So we're going to talk about not only what's wrong with this response, but how Gateway should have responded, and more importantly, how every church should respond to allegations of sin like this one, to allegations of criminal behavior like this one. We should respond in a way that always protects people and always protects victims. Now, at the same time, we also want to respond in a way that allows us to find the truth and that we don't just go willy-nilly after false allegations. But guys, the reality is this: 92 to 97%, depending on the study you look at, 92 to 97% of all abuse allegations of any kind turn out to be true, right? So we do need to assume these are true until proven otherwise anytime we face allegations like this in the church. And in this situation, I think we should assume that everything so far is true, especially because of how Gateway and Robert Morris have been so incredibly dishonest and disingenuous in the response. But let's go ahead. We're going to get into this, and I want to look at this the same way that we looked at Tony Evans' resignation from ministry last week. We're going to look at green flags. What are the things they did well in the response? Spoiler alert, there are none, okay? But we're going to look at the other two the same way. We're going to look at yellow flags. There are a few. And all of the red flags, especially the ones that still exist. So let's go ahead. Let's get into this. Where did this response go wrong? How should it have went different? And how should churches in general respond to situations like this? And as we go through this video, I'm going to be sharing different screenshots from the Roy's Report article that details not only Robert Morris's resignation yesterday, but statements from the victim here and statements from Gateway's elders. I'm also going to link that in the description so that you can go read that for yourself if you want just the details of what's happened. But with that being said, let's go ahead and jump into the green, yellow, and red flags of this response. So like I said, we'll start out with the green flags, and this will be really, really fast. There are 0 green flags from Gateway in this. They didn't respond well at all, and there's nothing good that we can take away from their response. Gateway responded about as poorly as a church can respond in situations like this, okay? They responded terribly. From minimizing to denying to all of the other things to trying to act like they don't have facts that they should have had. There's nothing good that we can take away from this. The only thing a church should do, or a church leader should do, is say, hey, how did Gateway respond? Let's never respond any way like that or looks like that to any sort of allegation. So that's the green flags. There are none. Yellow flags are this. Yellow flags are places where there's something good, but there's also simultaneously something bad or questionable, okay? And in this situation, there are some things that are good that came from yesterday's announcement, but they are almost overshadowed by the bad. Sometimes the yellow flags are more about questions than bad. In this case, though, they're not. The good is actually overshadowed by the bad that is still there. All right, so with that being said, let's go ahead and take a look at these yellow flags together. The first yellow flag, the good part of it, Robert Morris has resigned. He's no longer the pastor of Gateway Church, okay? Beyond the abuse, beyond the allegations of criminal activity, beyond all of that, he's proven in this response he is not above reproach as he's tried to dishonestly weasel his way out of this from everything that I've seen, okay? He's disqualified, period. We talked about that in our other video. If you haven't checked out our breakdown of this whole situation in detail, we spent about an hour breaking down how we got here, what this is, what needed to happen next. You're going to see a couple of those things we talked about. They've happened. Most of them, however, have not. So the good news, the good part of the yellow flag is that Morris is no longer the pastor of Gateway Church. The bad news, though, Morris resigned. Gateway's elders did not remove and still did not remove Robert Morris after everything came out. After it came out that this girl that he sexually abused was a 12-year-old child. After it came out that these allegations actually were criminal, right? That these things were criminal and had been covered up. They still didn't remove him, okay? He resigned. And in that situation, one, when they found out this information, they should have removed him. Do not let a leader like this resign and save any sort of face. You remove them because they're disqualified from ministry. But beyond that, before Gateway even knew what was going on, when they first heard of these allegations, when they first heard there was a story and they hadn't done any fact finding at all, the moment they heard that a potential victim was accusing Robert Morris, their pastor, of something like this, they should have immediately put him on the bench. They should have immediately said, hey, you are on leave. You are not acting as the pastor. You're not doing any of that. Churches, we have to do this. The only response to any sort of abuse allegations, doesn't matter whether it's emotional, spiritual, physical, sexual, any abuse allegations in the church should be met immediately with that person being set down on a leave of absence while we fact find. And at any point that we find facts that say, whether they're guilty or not, that they're not above reproach, then we let them go, okay? That is when we fire them publicly. We remove them from office. Where Gateway messed up at the beginning, they read the story, they got the information, did nothing, and then after they got the information from the story, then they decided to put out a statement to their staff to basically try to spin this or cover it up, okay? Robert Morris should have been put on the sideline immediately, and he should have been removed Friday, okay? He definitely shouldn't have had to have waited until yesterday, Tuesday, and resign on his own. So the good news, he's not the pastor there anymore. The bad part of the red flag, they didn't have the spine to remove him and do what church elders and governance structures are supposed to do. The second yellow flag, the good part, Gateway's elders have said, hey, we're committed to an independent investigation. Okay, we're bringing in a law firm to conduct an independent investigation to what happened so that we can learn all the facts that we can, learn from them, and know what really happened, okay? They're not trying to see if Robert Morris should be restored. They just want to get to the facts. Sounds fantastic on the surface. Here's the problem. Okay. The problem is that law firm, they do not specialize. I'll show you pieces of their website right now. They don't specialize in church issues or abuse issues or victim advocacy. They specialize in crisis management. And because they specialize in crisis management and a ton of other stuff that has nothing to do with the church, they have zero experience even with it. When they list their experience, they don't even say their experience on the website with crisis management in churches, right? So this law firm, it looks to me, is more on the side of crisis management and protecting Gateway, helping restore Gateway, than they are at finding out what really happened. Also, this independent investigation, not only is it being done by someone who this firm doesn't seem equipped to do this, doesn't seem to be doing it for the right motives, it's also only being done to look at 1982 through 1987 in this specific situation. Okay? When something like this comes out, we have to investigate a little deeper into all of the years of the service of the leader. Robert Morris, all of his years need to be looked into to make sure that there aren't any more victims or any other things that were covered up. Okay, not only an independent investigation into Robert Morris, this independent investigation needs to look at the culture and the leadership structures of Gateway as a whole. So great job that you're doing the independent investigation. We called for two things in that original video, which again, you can watch here. The two things we called for was, hey, remove Robert Morris immediately. Okay, he's gone, but they didn't remove him. And the second thing, we said do an independent investigation. They're not doing a true independent investigation, okay? It looks good, it's lip service, it's not a true independent investigation. And something, when we do our church safe assessments with churches, one thing we always encourage them to do is decide in advance who is going to do your independent investigations. Have your first choice, your second choice, your third choice. Decide on qualified groups and decide in advance, what do we do when these things are reported? If they had decided in advance, they would have put Robert Morris on a leave of absence immediately. They would have very quickly, as facts came out, removed him. And they would have turned to a group like Grace, Godly Response to Abusive Christian Environments, or Guidepost Solutions. They would have turned to an organization they'd already chosen who specializes in these kind of investigations and triggered the independent investigation immediately. So if you're a church leader, parishioner, it doesn't matter. If your church has not decided in advance, how do we handle allegations like this? If your church hasn't decided in advance, who will do an independent investigation and how do we trigger it? You're not going to respond well when it happens. People are going to try to cover up, okay? Humans are going to human. So what we've got to do, we have to decide in advance and build in systems that automatically trigger these investigations. So those are the yellow flags. Morris resigned, great, wasn't done well. It's an indictment on the elders, and there's an independent investigation, but it's not going to be good if it's done by this group. This is so much like the Mike Bickle IHOP situation all over again, where for months we couldn't get any sort of resolution because they wanted to have groups and law firms that weren't qualified to actually do these investigations, okay? That they were trying to protect IHOP instead of protecting the victims and finding truth. So it not only did Gateway respond terribly to this, they're following the same pattern that didn't work at IHOP. That playbook, church leaders, doesn't work anymore. Tell the truth or stop running that playbook. If you're going to try to cover it, find something new. This one doesn't work, and we all know it. Let's get to the red flags. There's a bunch of these. I'm going to go through them as quickly as I can. Again, I'll show you some things on the screen. You can go back and read these stories. But the first red flag to me, the elders, by all appearances, lied. Okay? They came out in their statement and said, hey, here's the deal. We didn't know. When this first came out, Pastor Morris had told us, this was an inappropriate sexual relationship with a young lady. He didn't tell us his age, her age. We're so sorry. We didn't know the age. We weren't aware, not our fault. I call bullcrap, okay? Bottom line, I call BS, because when they made the statement, when they sent the statement out on Friday to their staff saying this is what happened, it was in response to the Wartburg Watch article that was already out. They had already read the article, read the victim statement saying I was 12 years old. They flat out lied in front of all of us. We don't let them get away with that, okay? These are church elders who are lying to save face. they're finally sacrificing their pastor, the golden goose, because they have to, but they're still lying to save face for themselves and for this church. They absolutely knew. They knew before the statement came out because the article was already out. Not only that, though, you go read in the Roy's Report article that we're linking, Cindy Clementshire gave a statement, and in her statement, she said, hey, I've told other church leaders about this. Other big-time church leaders that run in these circles with Robert Morris, I've asked them to hold him accountable, and they refuse. But not only that, she actually details how she sent emails to Robert Morris and a previous elder in, I believe, 2005, and she let them know this information. And has an email trail where she very clearly said, I was 12 years old when this started. So the elders, the elder board, they have access to all those meeting minutes. They should have access to those emails. They should have known back in 2005, but they definitely knew when they sent out that statement. So the first red flag, the elders are still lying. Okay, so now let's just be clear. You've made it very clear, Gateway elders, you have disqualified yourself from ministry. And every single elder on that board, the staff members included, and Robert Morris's own son, you should all resign. You need to get new elders to handle this going forward at Gateway, and the church at large needs to vote on those, okay? You cannot be trusted to do this investigation anymore. You can't be trusted to lead this church anymore. You flat out lied to us. You're disqualified. All right, second red flag, they waited too long. And again, we talked about that. They should have set Robert Morris down immediately. When the facts started coming out as they did, they should have removed him for not being above reproach. Instead, they waited really as long as possible. They waited about 5 days, 4 to 5 days to do this, okay? Again, the other red flag, we've talked about it as a part of the yellow flag. They never actually removed Robert Morris, so which makes me believe that he finally said, hey, there's a part of this I've got to resign. You should have removed him. But a couple other red flags to look at here. Again, we talked about the independent investigators. They lack the experience for this. They specialize in crisis management. This looks like you're just trying to check a box instead of actually get better or get justice for the victim. Okay? We don't need any more church leaders who are just going to check a box. Okay? There is no crisis management. This is people management. This is a real person. This is a real victim. This is a real person that Jesus loves and died for. We need to make sure she's taken care of, and we need to make darn sure this never happens again. Okay? And if we can't do that, if this church can't totally transform their systems, do an actual independent investigation, and make sure they're doing everything within their power to make sure this doesn't happen again, then the church needs to dissolve. And that's not just Gateway. That's any of these churches. And I guys, I know I'm being hard. I know I'm a little angry. We should all be. And I'm going to continue being hard on this because I'm tired of these churches responding in the same toxic ways. Any church that responds this way needs to either immediately show us beyond a shadow of a doubt they're doing everything they can to protect the victims and make sure this never happens again. And if they can't do that, dissolve. Dissolve the organization completely, because I would rather us have less churches than have churches like this. You may have 100,000 people coming a weekend, but what good are you doing if you're not protecting those 100,000 people? All right. Again, this firm, they're more crisis management. This is about reputation to me. All right. They're only looking at 82 through 87. That's a big red flag. They need to look at Robert Morris's entire tenure, and more so, they need to look at the leadership structure, the culture, everything about Gateway. Okay. Cover up was way too easy here to not be built into the leadership structure and the culture. And the final red flag, we do need to mention it. An NDA was allegedly used. Okay, this has been, it was reported in our last video, but it was again in Cindy Clemenshire's statement. Robert Morrison's attorney gave her an NDA. They accused her again of being, responsible for him abusing her, but they gave her an NDA and tried to cover this up. The moment the church elders heard that accusation, okay, they should have reached out to Robert Morrison's attorney about it. They should have looked into this. They should have reached out to Cindy. And the moment they found out that there was indeed an NDA, he should have been removed. He should have been fired. My guess is Gateway probably, and again, this is just a guess. My guess is Gateway probably already uses NDAs with staff who leave and other people to try to control the narrative. So the fact that you knew about the NDA, you didn't do anything about it, another huge red flag. So two good things have happened. Robert Morris is no longer the pastor at Gateway Church, and an independent investigation has been triggered. But it's too little, it's too late, and we've got to have a lot more. There's a lot more steps to be taken. So Gateway Church parishioners, Gateway Church Elder Board, here's my challenge and my call. And I know everybody's not going to agree with this. I don't care. From SAI, this is our challenge and this is our call. Gateway elders, you have proven yourself disqualified from ministry. You have handled this poorly. You have been dishonest. You still seem more concerned with reputation of your church than with justice. You are disqualified. You need to remove yourselves. You need to resign as elders. Nobody else can remove you. So you need to resign as elders. Gateway Church, you need to vote in brand new elders to handle through this situation. People who weren't connected to Robert Morris and aren't on staff or anything like that. You just need regular men and women to step in and be some temporary elders to get this done. The other thing is the elders need to make an actual real apology to this victim. Okay, the apology they gave, it's not real because it's built on a lie. You need to tell the truth and give an actual apology on your way out that says, we handled this poorly. We handled this poorly, and we're resigning because we handled this poorly, and we're responsible for extra damage that was done not only to the victim, but to the reputation of the church in general. And the final thing that needs to be done, again, this is whether the elder board resigns or not. We have to put pressure on Gateway, unrelenting pressure on Gateway, to actually do a true independent investigation with a firm that specializes in this. Like I said, my recommendations are always Grace, Guidepost Solutions, places like that. Go to them first. This has to be truly an independent investigation that's focused on the truth and justice, not crisis management, not reputation, not anything like that. And why do I say we have to put pressure on them? Because I still don't think Robert Morris would have resigned. I don't think the elders would have done anything from what they've shown us if we hadn't have put national pressure on Gateway. From communities like Church Disrupted to national news outlets all around the world, we have put pressure on them. The pressure was so great, they had to do something. And if they didn't have to do something because of the pressure, I still think he would be the pastor and they would still be trying to cover this up. So, hey, that's great. This is a good start. We have to keep the pressure on Gateway to do a fully independent investigation. And again, I'm calling on Gateway Church parishioners. Until they do that, stop attending, stop tithing, stop giving, stop supporting the church. If they have not committed, if Gateway Church has not committed to an actual independent investigation by Sunday, and if their elder board has not resigned by Sunday, then my hope and my challenge to you would be that the parking lot at every Gateway location is completely empty, even of church staff. Because staff at Gateway, you know at this point, the elder board needs to be removed, and you know an independent investigation needs to take place. A truly independent investigation. So again, the only way we're going to put pressure on them, the only way we can make a vote for reformation that counts is when churches do things like this, we remove all support. You don't attend, you don't give, you don't support, you treat them like they're not there, and for everything Gateway has and all of their assets, they would crumble overnight if we stopped supporting them, okay? Bottom line, when we support organizations and leaders that do things like this, that react this poorly, we become complicit in their sin. And even if I've missed something or they want to say, hey, technically this wasn't a lie, which I don't see any way that it couldn't have been, the bottom line is just like with Robert Morris, this elder board has now proven they're not above reproach. Okay, so keep the pressure on. Let's make sure this victim gets justice. Let's make sure that churches learn from this one, that they are so fearful. These narcissistic leaders, churches that try to cover things up, let's make them so fearful that what happened at Gateway could happen to them, that churches change how they respond to these things and decide in advance how to respond to abuse allegations, even if they're not doing it with the right heart. If they're doing it out of fear, we are moving into a better place. We cannot tolerate churches covering up allegations of abuse anymore. We cannot tolerate spin. We cannot tolerate lies. We cannot tolerate technicalities. We have got to get serious as Christians. In the kingdom of God, we have to get deadly serious about protecting the least of these. And I'll finish this video this way. I had a person that I believe attends Gateway who was, they were lambasting us. They were taking up for Pastor Robert Morris. And they asked this question in the comments on our last video. They said, what would Jesus say to Pastor Robert? And they were trying to tell me that Jesus would show him a lot of grace. And I reminded them, we don't have to ask what Jesus would say in this situation about Pastor Robert or these elders, because Jesus has already said it. In Matthew, he said, if any one of you causes one of these little ones to stumble, it'd be better for you to have a millstone tied around your neck and be thrown into the sea. Are those harsh words? You betcha. But they came from the Savior of the world. They came from the Savior. The Gateway, the elders, and Robert Morris all say they follow. We need to start treating the damage and abuse and mistreatment of the least of these the same way that Jesus treated it. And he could not have taken it any more seriously. Let's stop playing games and let's demand that churches and church leaders do better and protect the least of these. And at minimum, we investigate thoroughly every allegation of abuse. We don't take up for pastors. We put them on leave until we make sure people are protected. So churches, there's a whole lot you can learn from this. Don't mimic how Gateway responded, but there's a whole lot you can learn from this about the wrong way to do it. Don't do it the wrong way. All right. So anyway, guys, I'm so tired of talking about this. I'm so frustrated with churches doing this. I hope that you are too. I hope this video was helpful. I really hope that we are taking this charge, and that as Christians, especially Gateway parishioners, we got to make an example of this one. And until we start making examples of churches that do this, until we make it untenable to act this way, these things are going to keep happening. And they're not going to keep happening because people don't love Jesus. They're not going to keep happening because all churches are bad. All churches are not bad. They're going to keep happening because so many times these things are happening in churches that are so big business, they've forgotten what it's like to be a church. This is not a business. This is a church. And as Christians, we, the church, hold the organization and institution accountable. These businesses are accountable to us. And I hope that you'll join me in saying we will not tolerate this any longer. I'm praying for better days. I'm praying that the reform that I believe is already starting will hit rocket speed. Okay? We can't have reform, though, until we all step up and play our role. We all have a role to play, and we can't have reform until we start by dismantling the toxic systems that have weaseled their way into the church. And we start with these systems. We start today. I'll see you again on the next video.